Well, tyres, hugely important on e-mountain bikes, both in terms of the control and also the range you get out of your battery. Now, we've done previous tests on the channel. The last one we did, we had a hard compound tyre versus a soft compound tyre, and we found around about 10 watt-hours difference on a 30-minute loop. However, some of you said that, well, it wasn't scientific enough, which brings us to the famous rolling road in Ray's workshop. Ray, it's a bit different today, a bit more of a controlled environment, isn't it?
Absolutely. And what we're going to do is put the same kit in the same environment and see how things operate.
Yeah, so what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be running two different tyres, a Maxxis Recon and also the softer compound Maxxis Shorty tyre. We're going to be running it at 10 psi, 20 psi and 40 psi. And also, Ray, two different rider weights, right?
That's right. Me at 70 and you at?
Around about 90.
On a good day.
First up, Ray sets out to get the rolling road set up for two different rider weights, 70 kilos and 90 kilos, starting off with the latter, and a number I'm pretty familiar with. Okay, what have we got here now, Ray?
Now, what we're going to do is we're looking at this to see that the load is right. We want to simulate a 90 kilo rider, and for that reason, we've got to calibrate the load that's put on with the air rams.
Okay, so we've got Jones weight, yeah?
We're going to have the Jones weight, and there we go. 34 kilos, the weight we require, which is 68, just under 70 kilos dry. And then on top of that, we've got the weight of the bike.
Okay, we ready to crank it up, Ray?
Yeah, I'm ready to start. I'm going to start now.
Channel 2. And so with the Maxxis Recon mounted, we start the wheels rolling. Today we'll be running tests with the tyres at 10 psi, 20 psi and 40 psi with speeds of 8, 16 and 22 kilometers an hour. Okay, Ray, we're on 90 kilos now and we've got 40 psi on the tyre, so let's take it away.
Okay, here we go. Going to take a little few seconds to get up to speed. I'm going to put the load on now.
You hear the sound drop there, can't you?
I'm at the right speed now, 8 kilometers, and I'm recording 95 watts on the load.
95 watts.
Yeah, so I'm going to put that on.
Got some spectators.
And now we're going to wind up now. We're going up to 16 kilometers now. Just going to adjust it. We've arrived now at 160 watts. And now we're going for gold.
Already the results of the Recon with a 90 kilo rider at different speeds and pressures are quite startling. At 40 psi, we already see a difference of over 50 watts needed between the speeds of 8 and 16 kilometers an hour. We then run the rolling road at 20 psi and 10 psi respectively, and also for the lighter 70 kilo rider as a comparison. We've seen on so many occasions on the channel, from the Tour de Mont Blanc to the hills and lakes of Wales and Scotland, just how much further lighter riders can go. But we're also acutely aware of the impact of tyre pressures on the control we have on our eMTBs. But what we really wanted to find out is exactly by how much. And is there a trade-off between grip and range to be had out there in the real world? After the test, me and Ray chat about other data that's available online, namely Penn State. Well, Ray, we've done the rolling road. Of course, there is a formula called Penn State, isn't there?
There certainly is, yeah.
I mean, it's primarily based on road bikes and lighter weight mountain bikes, but it doesn't cater for those kind of bigger volume, softer compound tyres, is it? Hasn't got that data on there.
Yeah, it's pretty old data, but it's a good guide so that when you start doing these tests, you've got this guideline as to where you should be. And I think it's very important to have this information because you really don't know when you start testing where you're going to wind up. And so looking at that is a good guide, but it's nothing more in today's technology.
Exactly. So folks, we've now got some data on the Maxxis Recon at different tyre pressures, and I can tell you the differences in rider weight and speed is massive. I'm so glad we've done this. So Ray, let's have a look at some of those numbers. Ray, some really interesting data there. I mean, starting off with the rider at 70 kilos, and we run it at 10 psi, 20 psi, and 40 psi. Now, it seemed in that pocket between 20 and 40 psi, there wasn't really much difference, was there?
No, I think the designers who have made the tyre, they say that that's the pressure you should use, 20 to 40.
Yeah.
And it really seems it's pretty linear in there. Once you get up to 20, it's doing the stuff. But if you go down to 10, it's like a desert tyre.
There was a huge difference in the amount of watts taken from the tyre, wasn't there?
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So obviously, clearly not designed for those kind of pressures. But then, when we went up to a 90 kilo rider, the difference between a 70 kilo rider and a 90 kilo rider was massive in terms of the watts taken from the tyre, right? We're looking at around about 20 to 30 watts more for the 90 kilo rider, weren't we?
That's right. And it's the fact that the tyre is deforming, and then it has to get back as it was pretty quickly. Now the rollers on here, there's two large rollers, so it's not quite the same as running it on the road. It's slightly different, but the actual sole plate size is about the same. Yeah. It's the best we can do because this machine really is comparing like for like.
Yeah. So that's very important to understand that. This is a comparator, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's not a benchmark machine. No. It actually enables you to compare what's going on and always having a situation which is the same for one bike as another. So there's no difference. It's always the same when you set it up.
Yeah. The numbers to the Recon roll in and they bring up some interesting results. So Ray, I think it's time to go to the graphs and have a look at the outputs from the different tyre pressures.
Certainly is, because when we look at the graph, we can see what's going on and you can predict for other tyres as well.
Exactly. So guys, we've had time now to digest the data from both the Shorty tyre and the Maxxis Recon tyre, and some quite interesting results here. First of all, Ray, it seems that there are actually differences between rider weight and tyre pressure in terms of the watts taken from your battery, aren't there?
Absolutely. If you've got a flat tyre, it takes more.
Next up, folks, is the Maxxis Recon tyre. Now, this is a cross-country style tyre with a harder compound and a lower profile. And again, as Ray has seen, we've got differences between the tyre pressure and the rider weight in terms of the watts used by that tyre. But Ray, it's not just as simple as that. There's some very key detail here. Primarily, the difference between 20 and 40 psi, right?
Absolutely.
There is none.
There is none. There is none. And there's also none for the heavier rider. So 70 kilo rider here, and it's running pretty well for him there because between 20, 30 and 40, anywhere in that zone, he can ride the bike and should get the same sort of performance. This certainly comes up at the rolling road, showing it's the same drag, if you like, over this area. When you get to 10 psi, okay, it falls over the top of the cliff, and that's no good at all.
And that's mirrored in the heavier rider as well.
Absolutely, indeed it is.
Do you know, that makes me think I need to get out. Whereas some of you guys said, you know, you want to see some more scientific evidence, I'm thinking now I now need to go back outside and see how that Recon performs with the 20 and 40 PSI to see if there's any difference.
Absolutely, you've got to get the user's feel and see if there is a difference. So you can try 20, 30 and 40.
Right.
And maybe if the rolling road is being, you know, pretty good, then you'll find that there is no difference. But of course, when you get to 10 PSI, you can run on sand with that.
Whilst we see that there are big differences between rider weights in terms of how many watts needed, it seems we have a situation where between 20 and 40 PSI, the difference is pretty low. Having pondered the Recon numbers, we then move on to the Maxxis Shorty, a soft compound, aggressive, wet and loose weather tyre. Here in Wales and the borders, the Shorty is a favourite of ours, and I pretty much keep one mounted for a large part of the year. Great for climbs, cutting in the corners, and generally like glue on rocks. Great for traction, but how about watts? Even with a 70 kilo rider, the numbers are significant.
Here we have a 40 PSI tyre with a 70 kilo rider, 20 PSI with a 70 kilo rider, and right at the bottom, the lowest pressure really, 10 PSI, 10 kilo rider again. And you can see that the performance is such that we are getting further down here, and that means that we're going slower and slower. For the 90 kilo rider, you can see the results are quite poor. And he really is slowing up quite a lot here and using more power to get his speed. So that's the graph that gives you the basic information for standard types of tyres with 70 and 90 kilo riders with high and low pressures. And this is a standard sort of tyre that you would expect on most bikes. However, there are other tyres that might have different performances. Yeah, so as you said folks, so these numbers here are for the Maxxis Shorty tyre. Maxxis Shorty is a soft compound tyre for mud and loose conditions. But as Ray mentioned, significant differences here in terms of the wattage taken from your battery just from the tyre pressure and the rider weight. Now this goes with some of the earlier comparisons we did out in the field, which some of you said weren't scientific enough. So as Ray can prove there's some real facts there on the data. Right, now let's have a look at some of the fine detail within these graphs to see some real numbers of the difference in tyre pressure and rider weight on the effect of the watts. So Ray, first of all, let's have a look at the 70 kilo rider and at 16 kilometers an hour, the difference in the watts used and the different tyre pressures. We have the rider here running at 20 or 40 PSI and across here at 10 PSI. So we have 15 watts more if he's running at 10 PSI, or the other way around, the difference is 2 kilometers an hour. Not much, but still 2 kilometers an hour. Yeah. But when we move to 22 kilometers an hour, there's an even bigger difference, isn't there? Yeah, the difference is 25 watts. You need, if you're going with a 10 PSI tyre, another 25 watts to catch up and do the same speed. Or, the other way around, 3 kilometers an hour is the difference if you use the same power. Okay Ray, but what about when we go to Jones weight at 16 kilometers an hour over the different pressures? What's the results there? Things are not so good, unfortunately. The difference is 32 watts or 3 kilometers an hour. And then further up at a higher speed, 42 watts extra, or the difference could be 4.5 kilometers an hour, which is quite a lot, walking pace. Wow, that is a lot. So if you're out on a ride and you're out with your mates, make sure your tyre pressures are right? Absolutely. And also, you're going to go further. You will indeed, yeah. Amazingly interesting data there in the lab on Ray's rolling road. I think the message, as it has been previously, Ray, is whatever you do, get your weight down if you want more from your battery, right? Absolutely, because the battery is going to take you where you're going to go. And if there's more of you going, there's more power being taken. But folks, it's not just about the range of your e-mountain bike. The tyre is critical in the control you have through rocks and roots and difficult technical terrain. So please think about that as well when you're looking at your tyre pressures. But certainly tyre pressure array is a big subject that really need to pay close attention to. Very important indeed to get it right. And you can see with this sort of tyre that there's a good level section when you come to 20 PSI and you're there, you've arrived. You don't need 60 psi. You're not going to get any more if you even go to 30 psi. So it's a good system that they've got.
So there you go, folks. Any questions? Aim them at Ray and he can answer them. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time when we look at another aspect of tyres.